All right, bowlers, let's take a little look here. So we did a couple little tests here, and the biggest thing that we're noticing, and the USBC's made this rule change, so now we're opening the static rule to a 3-ounce maximum in any direction. So there's been a lot of questions so hey, if I have a pin placement of said distance with a mass bias placement of different distance, and one has a different CG placement than the other, hey, what's this really going to affect in ball motion? Because, there's a lot of questions out there because we can't have the extra hole to kind of balance them out and put them in the places that we felt in the past always kind of dialed in our ball motion. So what we notice is we have one that's a 3-inch pin to the 3-inch pin to the CG, and then another one that is a pin 6 inches to the CG. So we basically created a 5x3x2 layout. And we're going to target, we're going to try to match the laydowns, launch angles, and the release speed on these two balls to see if anything kind of defines itself in differences in reaction between the two. So really we're going to see if we can quantify any differences in these two balls. So the first video we're going to show here is we're going to show this is a 5x3x2. This was the 3-inch CG to pin. Notice it's a little bit stronger, more positive weight in it. We'll talk a little bit about those statics and the final measurements in the end. But let's take a look at that one first. And if we notice in this first video, we still see a great motion in the ball, great shot shape, gets to the pocket. But what do we know difference between the 6-inch pin and the 3-inch pin to the CG? So let's take a look at the other video. So now we have the other video here. Chad's trying to mimic the exact same laydown point and launch angle and speed at release. So if we notice the two, you really don't see any differences in the shot shape. So based on initial read on video, you'd say to yourself, well, I don't really see much. So let's take a look at the numbers. So we have pre and post drill specs, 248.053.17. We know that's the standard spec. After drilling, we add a little bit of differential to it. The intermediate goes up a little bit because anytime we get the hole closer to the PSA, we make the weight block a little bit narrower. We increase the intermediates. But if we look at the static weights in the ball, positive side, 1.8 ounces of static side weight. Finger weight, 1.2 ounces of finger weight. So if we look at the other ball, in the ball that's 6-inch CG to the pin, we look at 248.053.17 prior to drilling, after drilling, almost identical specs. We haven't changed the specs any because we're still putting the holes in the same place into the weight block. So even though the static is in a different spot because that's a little bit of a floating static mass, we're still placing it based on the pin distances and the PSA distances. We're still placing the holes in the same spot. But we do notice a difference in a positive weight. So only a little over half an ounce of side weight. It's still about 1.1 ounces of thumb weight versus 1.2 ounces of finger. So we flip that finger and thumb weight between the two balls. So you'd say in statics, we do see a distinct difference, almost an ounce more, a little over an ounce more of positive side. But in reference, 2 ounces difference, 1 ounce of finger weight to 1 ounce of thumb weight. So 2 total ounces difference in weight. Okay, so let's take a look at Specto here. And then we show those shot paths, and we've seen these shot paths throughout this entire webinar in those internal testing that we did. Now, notice that there was 2 shots made with each ball. So now we have 2 shots with each ball. So there's 4 balls on this shot path, and virtually you can only see 1 ball path and 1 ball motion. And what it goes to prove to you is in a strong asymmetrical bowling ball that really the most important thing to remember is pin distances to the PAP, PSA distances to the PAP, and the buffer. No matter where the CG falls, the reactions are going to be pretty much identical. The only thing you might see a little difference is in pins, but we haven't done thorough enough testing, no one has, to see if there's a difference in the static weight as they go through the pins. But in our ball motion, for that traveling through the lane, virtually no differences in shot shape. So bowlers, pro shop operators, don't be afraid. If you've got one with a little bit higher, a little shorter CG, one with a little bit farther CG, just put the layout in you want based on that pin and PSA. And once again, it's the most important factor. So I guess there's a guy in the industry, he said something about CG no matter, so sometimes he is right. So in this situation, the CG really doesn't matter. It's pin distances to the and the PSA distances to the PAP.